Hello and welcome to this special series of Ingram Micro's B2B Tech Talk podcast, Coffee with Women in Tech, with your host, Harpreet. This is a show where incredible women in technology share their stories and successes. Why should a woman consider a career in tech? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this series, where you'll learn why tech is just the place to be for women.
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Coffee with Women in Tech. Today I have two lovely ladies with me from Ingram Micro Cloud team. We have Abhi Morjaria, Marketing Manager. Hi Abhi, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you. Harpreet, how are you?
Yes, really well, thank you. And we have Madeleine Skillen, Senior Marketing Executive. Hi Madeleine, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Harpreet. Yeah, good all here.
Great to have you both here. So, ladies, we are in the lockdown again. And, I was thinking about this the other day. What would I do differently during this second lockdown? So, Abhi, let's start with you. What do you think you'd do differently this time?
Well, I think what lockdown kind of brought out new skills in people that they didn't know they had. So I started the last lockdown actually doing some cooking and actually doing some new recipes and things and being a bit more creative with that. But I think this lockdown, I really need to learn something new as a skill, and that's something that I'm going to put kind of myself and hold myself accountable for. What that skill is yet to be defined. So give me a few days and I'll share with you what I'm working on.
Sounds great. What about you, Madeleine?
I think I'll try and stick a bit more to a fitness regime. I did start out quite strong at the start of the first lockdown, but it kind of petered off towards the end. That said, I'm really trying not to put too much pressure on myself because I think, on social media, there's a lot of narrative about goal setting and the importance of getting most out of lockdown. And it's quite a stressful time in itself. So maybe not putting on too much pressure on myself to achieve all of these things, but just doing something a bit more realistic.
Sounds very sensible. Yes, that's true. So, talking about, your career journey in technology, Abhi, do you want to talk us through your journey in this industry?
Sure. So my journey in tech started as my placement year well over a decade ago. So showing my age. But this was back in sort of 2006 whilst I was at university. I was given an incredible opportunity at one of the leading sort of tech giants known as IBM. And I continued my career with them for quite some time after I graduated. I then moved into some agency roles where I actually managed marketing strategy for other large tech brands. And then I left and co-found a milkshake and dessert shop with my husband. And I also started my own e-commerce business on the side as well at the same time. But I did return into tech just over 3.5 years ago. And I've progressed through sort of key marketing roles, including head of marketing for the UK business and now global marketer for our cloud business here at Ingram Micro.
That sounds great. So, what e-commerce business then? Do you want to talk more about this? And that
Sure.
dessert business sounds great.
Sure. So my e-commerce business was a online Indian jewelry shop that I'd created. So I had an e-commerce shop front window, which I created from scratch, and really just wanted to do something different. And I kind of had some motivations of changing that perception of beauty for young girls in the industry and really giving them a foundation of having self-belief. So that was kind of the framework to the business idea, basically.
All right, that sounds really fascinating. And what about the dessert one?
Yeah, so that was something that we've had for some time and we recently sold. But the business was in a village near where I live right now, and my husband and I created this milkshake bar, which the village had very little to offer for the young people in the village, and it was something that brought in the families and children after school, and we just obviously both had a sweet tooth, so we started branching out into desserts like waffles, gelato, and other sweet treats.
Sounds so tempting. Both fantastic ideas for a business. Really exciting. What about you, Madeleine? How did you start your career in tech?
Well, I'd say that I was coming up to graduating and I'd done some marketing placements in the summers during university, but I didn't really know that I wanted to go into tech. I kind of fell into it, and I worried a lot actually prior to falling into a job what I really wanted to do. But essentially my finals were coming up and I was looking for a summer placement somewhere. and a job came up in my local town for a software company that was US owned, but it was the UK headquarter was in Northampton actually. And it was a paid internship just for the summer. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. It's in marketing. I've already got some prior experience that I can build upon. Applied for the job, and on the first day, my first boss said to me, you need to try and treat this as a long-term interview, and if you impress, we'll make you full-time. Well, I do love a challenge, so I kind of set about making myself a full-time employee. And over the course of the summer, I was really lucky. I mean, they gave me a lot of opportunity for growth, for career progression. They sent me off to Paris for a week to go and help with the marketing executive over there.
Nice.
And then, it came to a difficult decision, actually. I had applied in the meantime to actually do a master's, and the master's application came through, and it was kind of like, well, do I go back and study geography because I did geography in French university, or do I continue a career in tech and try and chase that? And I kind of just fell in love with it, and I thought, actually, I don't think I want to go back into academia. And that's kind of where it started. So since then, I stayed at Aptian, the company that I was working for a couple of years, learned a lot. And then I for kind of like a new position and a new challenge. And that kind of is what led me to Ingram Micro Cloud. So that's really it in a nutshell, I'd say.
Oh, that's an exciting journey. So no regrets about leaving geography behind then?
No, absolutely not. I mean, there is still some relevance. I did human geography, so when it comes to kind of like some political, social, and economic awareness, you can still apply some of the theory to kind of your everyday, especially working for tech, which is, at the forefront of kind of this globalization curve. But I would definitely say that, the skills that you pick up at university, even if they're not directly related to the career that you end up going into, they're transferable. So the analytical side of geography definitely comes in useful when I'm looking at metrics and data and progression plans and that type of thing. So yeah, I would definitely still say there's some relevance.
Yes, and that's an important thing to bear in mind when those young female graduates are looking for careers, that regardless of what they've been studying, there's always some transferable skills which would be well suited to the tech industry.
Absolutely. I mean, tech is so diverse, and the people that I work with within my team, and I'm sure Abby will vouch for this as well, they all have very different backgrounds. And I think that's what makes it really quite unique and in many ways so successful, is that you have different thinkers coming to the table with different methods and different ideologies and different way of looking at things. And that's why tech evolves at the pace that it does, because it really helps to foster that difference, and it really values it.
Yeah, totally agree with that, which is what makes tech such an exciting place to be.
Absolutely.
So we are not only trying to encourage women to obviously consider a career in technology, but also share some tips on how to go about it. So Abby, in your opinion, firstly, why should women consider a career in tech, and what would you say are the initial steps that they can take?
Sure. So I guess the simple answer is that the career in tech is not just for men, and I think we've all proved with some of our kind of stories of why tech. But with the current climate and the challenges that we face, I think we can say a career in tech is definitely here to stay. I'm not saying that every role in tech is future proof, but we are an industry that's completely relied upon and thriving in a very unfortunate circumstance. So there are also many sides to our industry and avenues that can be pursued. So whether you want to be at the forefront of development of technology through vendors or ISVs, or even managing that partner ecosystem through the likes of Ingram Micro, to even being at the forefront of tech in sort of vertical industries such as finance, online commerce, even media or healthcare, we can see that all of these, industries have been sort of critical and essential, even during the pandemic. So for me, technology really cuts across everything that we do, and it's that tech disruption that really innovates these industries as well. In terms of how to go about this, I definitely suggest, if you have an interest, that you maybe even find a niche that you want to learn more about or pursue. There's loads of online courses you can do, but also just reading up on things around cybersecurity or infrastructure as a service, and also try and network and connect with people. And the likes of LinkedIn is a great network to use to try and find people that are like-minded or have maybe some positions of authority in those industries. The world of connections and knowing people really does help open those doors, and I think I found that myself. Is my connection, my network, and the people that are around me are really helping me to kind of open new doors. And even taking on things like internships or maybe work experience if you're very early on in your career. This, I know, sometimes it may be unpaid work, but I think given the current situation, I think if you want to gain some experience and learn more about something, maybe just ask the question, can I, shadow for a week or so over your role, people that you know, and it will really give you that comfort of knowing whether it's a place that you want to be before you do take a plunge.
Yes, and that's quite a good point, because getting that young talent and then nurturing them through their careers is quite a key piece, and more should be done. When women are at that school university level. So, Madeleine, tell me about the work you're doing with the young graduates at Newcastle University.
Sure. So after graduating from university, Newcastle reached out and asked about whether the alumni would like to take part in some kind of mentoring. Now, mentoring is something that I did do when I was at the university, but it was kind of for secondary school students. So I had a little bit of experience, but I was still a little bit nervous because, I'd only been in my job a year. So I thought, well, how much could I actually offer? Well, rather surprisingly, actually, I think it's quite useful to have somebody that's recently graduated. And I often get questions from third year and fourth year students in regards to what does my job really entail? What is a marketing executive? Because, you read the job descriptions, but sometimes the terminology is so channel specific that actually in layman's terms, layman's terms are absent. So it can be quite difficult to kind of decode that in many ways, which is useful for an undergraduate to speak to somebody that's actually in the role itself. I think also in regards to what I've learned from it is that I've really gained an appreciation for the importance of kind of trying to foster talent that's up and coming. So not that I can maybe always foster it myself, but like Abby said, connections are really important. So if I can be the middleman and maybe, I definitely can't, for example, give a job at this point in time, not necessarily, but I could put them in touch with a person that may be able to offer them, some career advice, having had loads of years experience. I can give them, maybe put them in touch with somebody that is involved in HR, for example, and might be able to talk about the different schemes that IMC run, some graduate schemes or some apprenticeship schemes. So I think that's really useful, and it's kind of very bi-mutual as well.
Yeah, and that's a great thing you're doing, because then it's almost like being a bridge for, the university students and helping them get a flavor for what the industry has and maybe explore some opportunities. So I think that's a fantastic initiative.
Yeah, I mean, like Abby said, I think the key for undergraduates or even like newly graduates from this year, because it's very difficult now with the challenges that people in the job market are facing. I think the key is to try and be as proactive as you can be. And even if that means offering your services for free, or even if somebody can't necessarily offer you some job experience and work experience, maybe just ask them to pick their brains, Like I said, we all come from very different backgrounds, so we all have a lot to offer. There's a variety of different stories there that people can learn from.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where networking is so crucial, just to, get those initial experiences. And given the current situation, yes, I think any kind of experience would be really beneficial.
Yeah, I think as well, one thing that I've learned is as a graduate, when I was looking to apply for jobs, I would look at job descriptions and I would say, okay, I've got some skills that are relevant and transferable there, but where are the gaps that I kind of need to fill? And I still do that within my current job. You know, when I'm looking to progress within my career, I start looking at the job role, you know, above me and start thinking, okay, what can I do and what skills do I need to improve so that I can skill match to that, you know, promotion or that role. So as a graduate, I always recommend that undergraduates go into job descriptions that they think may be of interest, see where their skill set matches, and then wherever it doesn't, go on and look at some online courses. You know, now is the perfect time. There's a lot of platforms out there that are offering online courses for free or at minimal cost.
Yeah.
And see where you can hone your skills.
Yeah, and that's a good way of working backwards in a way. So, talking of diversity in the technology industry, clearly a hot topic. Would you like to share some thoughts around what more or different could be done to support women in their career journey within the industry? Abby, do you want to share some thoughts around that?
Sure. So just going back on some of the things around how we kind of can consciously help women through kind of progressing and showing that there is representation for them. One of the things that I think maybe undergraduates may see is they look at some companies and look at the board and realise that, you know, there are very few women on that board, so they may not want to apply for a job there potentially. So if we are going to do something as an industry, we need to think about how we close that skills gap, but also close that representation gap. And you know, we've made some changes at large scale, and there's still a long way to go. But one of the things that we do know is women are still less likely to choose studying STEM subjects. You know, 3% of women tend to want to study STEM versus, you know, 15% men. And a lot of that starts from sort of those sort of gender stereotypes that we kind of see. So people think certain careers are for women and certain careers are for men. And we need to eradicate that probably earlier on in the stage of learning from, you know, whether it's from school rather than later on when they're at uni. But that the diversity piece really is something that needs more kind of promotion, I suppose. And what we need to do is promote and share stories of success and future talent, you know, that's coming up and coming in the industry. Podcasts like this obviously really help campaign for women to join the industry, but also women in tech groups and recognition through awards such as the CRN Women in Channel Awards, which Harpreet, I must congratulate you on for winning recently as the Marketer of the Year.
Thank you very much.
Very well deserved. So we
Truly
definitely need
honored.
more.
Thank you.
We need more vocal leaders, both from women and men, pushing to kind of close that gap. And that gap is both in pay, but also representation at board level, just to make it more attractive, really, for younger talent.
Yes, the representation gap, because if you know, we have lots of female leaders whom, you know, who are almost advocates for this industry, it is clearly going to be a more attractive place for the younger women who could aspire to be, you know, like leaders in this industry. So I totally agree with that. Also, Abby, I read your blog about Working Mother's New Normal, where you talk about what is needed to support mothers, especially in the current situation. Share some thoughts around that, please.
Yeah, so I'll go into kind of high level view of some of the things and my thoughts and thinking around this. So for me, I like to blog quite often, as you may see from my LinkedIn profile. But I recently shared something around working mothers and how they need support for career progression, but also help in raising their children. So I recently had a child over a year ago now, but I was obviously on maternity leave and recently returned. And I just want to share kind of ways that we can, you know, help women and not limit their ability to progress. And it requires some changes in the workplace, and a number of workplaces offer great flexibility and great packages for women, and others don't. So I'm in a fortunate position where I've had a good kind of package to return back to, but some people are not as fortunate, right? And really the kind of the 5 key things that I share in this blog post is around a fair maternity package, because a lot of people are actually on very basic, and it doesn't really get them through their potential year out of working. The other thing that we really, I think, appreciate even more so now during the pandemic is the flexible working hours. That whole 9 to 5 working is very much blurred now, and having to log on at 9 o'clock and log off at 5 o'clock isn't something that really works for everybody, especially if you are a working mother. And I think we need to be a little bit more open about having that flexibility, and shifting from this sort of factory-like working hours. And then the other piece is around not really just within the work, but also outside work. So things like having a support network and just having friends that are outside of work and catching up and having a way to switch off from mum mode is always welcomed. So especially in the early stages of motherhood, it's really great to have that kind of interactions with people that are going through exactly what you are going through. And then the fourth point that I kind of make is around shared responsibility of parenting. So I kind of describe myself as a lucky one, and I'm really proud and thankful to have the support that I have from my husband. But I do know people are not as fortunate, and their story is not in the same sort of circumstances. And there's a number of reasons why this may be, but there needs to be equality at the stage of parenting as well as at the stage of later on in life when you're thinking about trying to change things. So for me, that was kind of a key thing that we kind of need to kind of promote and make people aware of. And the final thing that I go into is around moments to recoup and recharge, and just having that time off and being able to kind of take a day off work and not have to think about being a parent. But I know it's very difficult to do right now, but it's just something that we need to be aware of. And I'm trying to make this ideology of a working mother's sort of new normal a reality, and trying to share some ways we can do that.
Yes, and they're all fantastic thoughts, because those have been the biggest challenges during the lockdown for working mums, especially with young kids at home or homeschooling like it was the first time round. So yeah, really good thoughts there, Abby. I know we spoke of allies and mentors in the workplace, and Madeleine, you mentioned that you are actually mentoring some students at the university, which is fantastic. Do you want to give any examples of how mentors have played a role in your career journey at any point?
Yeah, absolutely. So mentors have played a critical role in my career progression, and my career journey. My first mentor, unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but she was fantastic. She didn't actually sit within marketing. She was she was a regional account director within sales. And what she gave me was the ability to actually sometimes take my own position within marketing and see how an issue could be interpreted from somebody else within the other part of the business, because we are all motivated in many ways differently. We all have different targets, KPIs, etc. So it really helps to give you, sometimes if you can get a mentor that's detached, whether that be detached from your company altogether, so they come at you with advice that's non-biased, or indeed somebody outside of your department that can really give you kind of a little bit more of a wider scoped response to your issues. And I think as well with mentoring, what's really important is that sometimes you might have an issue that you don't always want to go to your boss about, or you don't always want to go to your colleagues about, because it may be that it's an issue that's a little bit too close to home. So trying to get that outside perspective on it to kind of level out how you feel about it and rationalize it. And again, like I said prior, give another side to the story can really help to progress you, and it can become non-emotional as well if they're detached from that particular situation. I now have another mentor that she was actually, I was put in touch with her through Maria, our marketing director within the UK, who always does a lot to really try and help support the females within our community, our IMC community and Ingram Micro community.
That's true.
And yeah, she does a lot for me and the other girls on my team. And I must say that's been really helpful, because the mentor that I now have used to work at Ingram Micro. She now no longer does, but she can kind of she understands the structure of the company. But again, I'm getting that halfway house, in as much that she can still give that outside perspective now that is a little less biased than it would have been if I'd chosen somebody within the company.
Yes, and Maria was on this podcast, and she's absolutely fantastic at supporting her team. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And this mentoring, it's a topic that comes up time and time again. In fact, I've just recorded an entire episode to cover mentoring, where I spoke to a mentor and a mentee to hear both sides of the story. So yes, agree with you there, Madeleine. What about you, Abby?
Yeah, so for me, allies or mentors within the business or even inspiring leaders, they're all the change makers really that are helping us break these sort of glass ceilings, fix our sort of broken ladders, and also bring that balance into the boardroom. And throughout my career, I've always strived to learn from my managers and mentors and allies. The key things that I look at and learn from them about is things like how they deal with difficult situations and unknowns. I look at how they hire and promote based on merit and equal opportunities. I always notice and think about how their presence lights up a room and their energy lights up a room. I look at how they maybe show empathy and compassion towards their team, and also something that's really important to me is about diversity and inclusivity, and how they have a very diverse, inclusive team is very important, and learning just to see how they actually hold themselves. But also to this day, I still speak to a number of leaders, mentors who've basically impacted my career, and just ask them for guidance and advice, and also regard them as close friends rather than just mentors and leaders.
Always a very good approach, isn't it? Yeah, agree with you there, Abby. I would love to keep chatting with you, ladies. It's been so much fun, but we are in the final part of the podcast. And one question I ask all my guests towards the end is, if you could time travel, what advice would you give to your younger self? So, Madeleine, do you want to go first?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think I try not to live with too much regret. I think the only thing that I would maybe change is to worry less. Coming out of university and starting my first job and then moving on to Ingram Micro, I still to this day sometimes worry about my career progression, but you do tend to find that as long as you think about doing a good job in the moment, everything else kind of falls into place. And that's not saying that you shouldn't plan, but my mentor recently gave me some advice that was, it's good to plan, but don't plan too much, because, as this year I think has shown us more than any other, you can plan and those plans can kind of go awry and you'll have to kind of review the plan. So try and focus on creating quality work and doing the best job that you can do for the moment, and everything will kind of fall into place.
So planning is good, but also important to stay flexible with the plans.
Absolutely.
Very true. What about you, Abby?
I wish I could time travel to go back to my younger self.
I'd love that too.
It's a great question, but I was thinking about this, and I think one of the kind of pieces of advice that one of my old bosses gave me was, an expert in anything was once a beginner, and I really wish I knew that when I was my younger self, because it's stuck with me ever since. They shared that with me, and I think it's quite daunting in nature of starting something new, taking on the working world itself, and also having sort of self-doubt is very common, especially when you're maybe younger and new into your career. I remember when I was starting out in my career, I often felt overwhelmed, stressed, and frankly not confident to do my job. But I think it's all okay not to have all the answers and question our own ability. It also sounds cliche, but I really do think that it takes sort of moments of those challenges and learning from them to kind of help you build that confidence, and actually feel like an expert. So the other thing that I should actually note is I've met some extraordinary people, as I mentioned before, those sort of mentors and leaders who have really sponsored and supported and mentored me throughout my career. So anyone who's starting their career, you may not feel like an expert right now, but one day you will.
Yes, absolutely. And like you said, today's challenges are actually paving way for tomorrow's successes. So it's all right to feel overwhelmed if you do in the current situation, or if you feel in your current journey in your career. It's normal, and yeah, let's embrace it and let's carry on. As long as we're moving forward, it's fine, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, thank you very much for hosting us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Harpreet.
Thank you very much, Abby and Madeleine, for coming on this show and sharing some brilliant points and your thoughts. A great discussion indeed. And thank you to all the listeners. This is our final show for 2020, but we will be back in 2021 with a fresh cup of coffee and some new sessions. Bye for now and stay safe.
Thank you for listening to this special series, Coffee with Women in Tech, from B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. This was hosted by Harpreet Narang. Tune in again to listen to another great story. To not miss an episode, subscribe today in your favorite podcast platform.